Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Tuesday, February the 18th, 2025. This evening, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Village Clerk Manal Desai.
Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Sutker? Here. Trustee Robinson?
Here.
Trustee Kuhn? Here. Trustee Johnson?
Here.
Trustee Pierce-Lovan is absent. Trustee Klein?
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Here. I would like to ask unanimous consent of the board to move A under the village manager's report, declaration of emergency affecting public health resolution, up to what would be number 5 or 6, just after we take the consent agenda. Do I have unanimous consent? Okay, we will do it then. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion, Trustee Klein, second by Trustee Johnson. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody wishes to have removed? Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker? Aye. Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda will be A under the village manager's report. John?
Thank you, Mayor Van Dusen and trustees, and good evening, everyone. This item is regarding declaration of emergency affecting public health resolution. Friday morning, as a result of the water main break, the village activated the Emergency Operations Center, engaging our disaster management process. The EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center, brings our departments and resources together to resolve the emergency by providing strategic direction as well as support. Tonight, I respectfully request Mayor and Board approval of the resolution declaring an emergency affecting the public health due to the transmission water main break that occurred at East Prairie Road and at Emerson Street on Friday, February 14th, 2025. The declaration of emergency follows the activation of the Emergency Operations Center and makes resources available through the county and state emergency management. And also this evening, we'll be providing a presentation that Max Slankard, Director of Public Works, will start.
Max?
Thank you. I guess I would say I'm sorry to have to be here and talk about this subject matter, but nonetheless, here we are. So thank you and good evening. So I'd like to give a report on the main break that took place on Friday, February 14th. As many of you, if not all of you know, at approximately 5:15 a.m. on Friday morning, we had a water main failure at the intersection of East Prairie Road and Emerson Street. This is at this location, two of the village's primary water feeds from the city of Evanston happened to traverse this intersection, one on the north side of the intersection, one on the south side of the intersection. The village has two other feeds from the city of Evanston, but comparatively they're both small in size, so it is really these two 36-inch mains that provide the vast majority of the village's water flow on a daily basis. This resulted in, obviously a major impact to the village's water supply. The total timeline of the event from the first report to the ultimate lifting of the boil order that was put into place was from Friday morning through Sunday evening was approximately 61 hours in total duration. The original call with respect to water on the roadway came in at approximately 5:15 a.m. on Friday, February 14th, via Skokie Police reporting the water on the street, which was then relayed to Public Works to go and check the scene. The village activated its Emergency Operations Center at 7:12 a.m. that morning and met at 7:30 a.m. to coordinate the emergency response activities. At about that same time, with water pressure in the system rapidly dropping, a precautionary boil order was issued in accordance with Illinois EPA guidelines. Crews worked with the city of Evanston, who is the village's wholesale water provider, during the course of the day to operate valves and change feeds in order to try and isolate the area of the water main in order to effectuate a repair. As you will see from some of the pictures that will follow, and for those of you that have seen media coverage, the repair itself was actually effectuated by Boulder contractors because the size of the infrastructure that we're dealing with necessitates the utilization of contractor crews to make the repair. It is of such size that it goes beyond the scope and capability of the village's equipment to handle that. We were able to secure the services of Boulder or an alternative contractor in short order to mobilize to make those repairs. By approximately 7 p.m. that evening, Boulder was beginning to make the repairs, and by 9:10 p.m. on Friday evening, we were beginning to receive water supply from Evanston again in order to start recharging and replenishing the village's system. However, with the drawdown in the village's standpipe, which provides the principal pressure to the village's system, and that standpipe is located, large blue structure behind Public Works at 9050 Grosse Point Road. With the drawdown in the level of that tank, it takes time to refill the system and get the level up in that tower to provide pressure to the system. By 3 p.m. Saturday, we had reached the point and repressurized the system that we could then begin water testing, which is necessary in order for us to be able to lift a boil order. In order to lift the boil order, Skokie is required to take 70 water samples from various locations in the community and demonstrate that the water is clean, meets all IPA standards, and is safe to drink. Those water samples, once collected, require a minimum of 18 hours of incubation time in a laboratory for those samples to grow and be analyzed. So as a result, there is a period of time it takes to turn those samples. By 6 p.m. Sunday evening, the 16th, the village had received notification that all samples had tested negative, which in this case is a positive, and we were able to lift the boil order. The water main failure itself, so this is a Y junction that was in the intersection at East Prairie and Emerson. And it is at this point that the water main had a failure. The exact cause of the failure needs to be further investigated. However, one of the end plates or caps on this main was displaced when it was exposed. Exactly why it was displaced needs further analysis. We know that it was open and water was coming from the end of it when it was exposed. We have the why. We will be retaining expert services to analyze the failure, understand what its cause was, and then apply our understanding of that failure to any other similarly situated joints within the system. As you see here on this next page, these are photographs of the repair taking place. The repair, as I noted, began at 7 p.m. on Friday evening. This final picture to the right is the repair as of 4 p.m. Saturday afternoon with the pipe in place. The pipe is not in service as of yet, so it, as we would say, it has been dragged into place and it is connected. There are chlorination that needs to take place, and that has been successfully done. The line needs to be flushed, which we will do a few days from now when the weather warms a little bit. We need to flush it, and then we would anticipate bringing it into service perhaps by the end of the week, and then it will be back in service. So that's the repair. As you can see, it's obviously a significant size line, but it will be back in service soon. There is additional restoration activity, which I think John will touch on in a future slide, but there's definitely additional restoration activity that will need to take place in the vicinity of that intersection. There are certain street inlets and drainage tiles that have been disturbed by water flows that took place in that area that need to be tended to, and then we need to make a determination on pavement restoration that needs to take place for that intersection due to any voids that may have been created by the water flow that came as a result of this break. So.
And with that, Patrick Dignan, our communications manager and community engagement manager, will be stepping to the podium to elaborate on some of the communications that occurred.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. I'm Patrick Degnan, the Communications and Engagement Director with the Village. Well, the communications team was called into action very early on Friday morning, and we utilized every tool in our communications toolkit to provide updates throughout the weekend. I do want to acknowledge Meredith Joya, sitting back there, who was a key part of those efforts and supported our communications throughout the entire weekend, and it was a busy one. Just want to go over some of the tools that we used to get the word out throughout Friday morning through Sunday evening. Smart 911, that is our emergency notification system. We sent 6 updates out through that system, which include text messages, emails, and phone calls to approximately 9,000 subscribers, as well as phone calls to 20,000 Skokie landline customers. The Scoop, that is our very popular e-newsletter that we send out weekly. We sent 8 updates through that newsletter beginning on Friday morning and through Sunday evening, and that goes to 40,000 subscribers. We saw a really impressive open rate with each of those emails, greater than 60% open rate, which means about 24,000 people opened every email we sent, times 8, close to 200,000 email update opens throughout the weekend. Our village website, every update that we shared through the Scoop, we posted that on the village's homepage, and an article on the homepage was updated every time we shared an update to make sure that everyone else in the community who was sharing that link was sharing the most recent and updated information. We looked at website traffic and saw that on Friday alone, we had 28,000 visits to our website, and to put that into perspective, on a typical day, we might get 1,500 to 2,500 visits on a busy day. So more than 10 times your typical visitorship to our website. We also activated an emergency alert banner that was on every single page of our website that linked to that news article I mentioned that we updated Friday morning through Sunday night with all the latest updates. We shared every update on the village's Facebook and Instagram accounts. To give you an idea of how many times our content was viewed, Facebook content from Friday through Sunday had 100,000 views. And to put that into context, in all of 2024, our content had 150,000 views. So 3 days, we had 2/3 of our entire year of viewership. Instagram content, we had close to 50,000 views Friday through Sunday. In 2024, we had 100,000 views of our content on Instagram, so 50%. Also want to mention that staff, and particularly Meredith, monitored what people were talking about on social media throughout the weekend to identify any issues that people were having, and so we could address those in our upcoming communications, as well as answer people's questions and address any rumors or misinformation that was out there. We know everyone doesn't have access to the internet, so we did put a boil water order message on the village's cable channel 16, and that was in place throughout the weekend. We also updated our 1660 AM Skokie radio station with the boil water order information, and we shared information about the bottled water distribution events that were held, as well as the warming shelter facilities that were available. Our messaging and the communications throughout the weekend were guided by the conversations that were had through our Emergency Operations Center. And finally, late on Friday morning, we made a decision to hold a press conference to provide the media with a situational update and to share key messages with the public. As you can see, there was a lot of interest in this event throughout the weekend, and there still is. I want to just point out that organizing a press conference like this did require significant communications resources during the late morning hours on Friday and early afternoon hours, but we felt that it was time well spent in order to make sure that the media could share that message, the key messages with not only Skokie residents, but also the greater Chicago area. And want to point out as well that the press conference included remarks from our mayor as well as from the key departments who were involved in responding to this incident, including Public Works, Fire, Police, Health, Health and Human Services, and the Village Manager's Office. That press conference was streamed live on the Village's Facebook page, as well as recorded, and then that recording was shared just about an hour later in our e-newsletter to the entire community, as well as on the Village's website and on social media. So that's a summary of our very busy weekend in communications.
So this was a challenging time for the fire department, and stepping to the podium is our fire chief, Jeff Hoflick.
Good evening, Mayor Van Duzen and trustees and community. Jeff Hoflick, Fire Chief. Thank you for being here. I just want to take a few minutes to share the steps the fire department took to ensure that we had adequate water for fire protection throughout the water outage. So recognizing early on Friday morning that the pressure was dropping and that this was not a normal water main break, obviously a much larger capacity loss than we any time have experienced. We quickly realized we would need to set up a secondary water supply, and so we reached out to through Mavis, Illinois. We have agreements through Mavis, Illinois, where we have prearranged fire protection resources, and in this case, we reached out to Lake County, Illinois, for a water supply task force that would provide us additional resources that we could get in our firehouses and ensure we would have adequate water for this event. So we did arrange for a fire drafting pumper from Lakeville, Illinois, three water tenders, which are basically tankers. Collectively, those tankers carried at least 10,000 gallons of water, which would be a mobile water supply that we could bring to the scene of any emergency. And then we also had a water supply chief from Newport. Altogether, we got resources from, and I want to acknowledge them, Newport Fire Protection District, Lake Villa Fire Protection District, Fox Lake Fire Protection District, Greater Round Lake Fire Protection District, Libertyville Fire Department, and Antioch Fire Protection District. And so we maintained those resources throughout the water outage until the pressures got back up to a stable level that could support our operations through the water hydrants or fire hydrants. We also put one of those tenders to work supplying a tank at the hospital. They have a tank that draws down off of their heating system. And so every 4 hours, we sent our crews along with one of the tenders to refill the tank every 4 hours, beginning Friday afternoon through Saturday afternoon. By then, the water pressure was coming in enough to support their needs at the hospital. I also want to acknowledge our E911, who obviously had to handle a tremendous amount of call volume. Typical call volume for the 3-day period is about 280 emergency calls and about 520 non-emergency calls or administrative calls. In that same period for this event, they handled 400 emergency calls approximately, and about 1,220 non-emergency or administrative calls. So obviously they did the best they could in handling those calls and getting attention as best they could, or diverting those calls to members of Public Works or other people as needed. Thank you.
The village strived to provide resident support during this emergency in true Skokie spirit. Village staff, businesses, organizations, and community members came together with neighboring suburbs to support those in need. Some examples include the water distribution events at Sketchbook Skokie Tap Room. The Health and Human Services Department had outreach to our known vulnerable residents. There was door-to-door water distribution in the area of the water main break. The Red Cross set up an overnight shelter for the village of Skokie residents at the Unitarian Church in Evanston for Friday night. And then the village has suspended any late payments, basically extending the opportunity for people to pay their water bills for their February, March, and April water bills, trying to be sensitive to the challenges that people have gone through. In addition, the businesses in our community suffered, and we strive to provide support to them as well. The Economic Vitality Division of the village coordinated with the Department of Health and Human Services and the Fire Department to work with the businesses to determine whether or not it was safe for them to open. We will continue to support these businesses as they work to recover from the loss of income due to the emergency. Stay tuned for campaigns encouraging the support of Skokie businesses. There's a preview in the middle of Love Your Locals. We love to support our local Skokie businesses, and we're going to be encouraging that. And there's already a lot of grassroots initiatives along this line on social media. And it's always a good time, especially now, to buy gift cards from Skokie businesses. This was a very difficult time, as we've talked about, for our residents and businesses. It's important for property damage to be reported. The village is preparing a preliminary damage assessment report for Cook County Emergency Management for qualifications for potential disaster funds and public assistance reimbursement. So the village is requesting anyone that experienced damage to contact us through email at riskmgmt@skokie.org with specific information. The details of this is available on the village's website. And again, this is important for us to collect this information in order to hopefully qualify for a designation through the emergency management process so that there can be some financial assistance to the community. We'd also like to highlight the next steps. Continuing restoration of damage to the streets in the repair zone, as Public Works Director Slankard mentioned. Work with insurance companies for the residents and businesses that experience damage. Initiate a comprehensive failure analysis. Review records, including as-builts of other similar components within the water infrastructure. Determine any mitigation measures necessary to prevent this from occurring in the future, and conduct a thorough post-incident analysis of the emergency response to capture lessons learned. And importantly, we want to thank the community. The village understands and appreciates that many individuals, businesses, organizations, neighboring communities, and intergovernmental entities came together to provide their support. But most of all, we would like to thank the Skokie residents and businesses for their patience and understanding during this crisis. Skokie spirit was truly exemplified. So that completes our presentation.
Okay, I'm going to take just a moment, if I may, to also thank some people. I want to thank our staff. I think they did a remarkable job. From the moment that they recognized that there was a problem in the early morning of Friday up to all the way through the entire crisis, they were open and they were working every single hour of the day. Public Works, our health department, our fire department, police department, economic development, etc. I also want to thank all of the volunteers. The number of people who volunteered to help out with the water distribution program was enormous. Yesterday morning, I came over to participate and I help out a little bit. President Preckwinkle and Josina Marita were there handing out water along with people from our Health and Human Services Department, our Public Works Department, and residents. It went efficiently. I want to particularly thank the contributions that were made of water. Cook County, Reyes Coca-Cola Bottling Company, PepsiCo, Mariano's, Walmart, the city of Evanston, as well as the Sam's Club, Lowe's, Cook County. And if I may, I want to single out, they didn't ask me to, but I'm going to anyway, Senator Villavalum, as soon as he heard about it, was on the phone to us asking what he could do. Commissioner Marita was on the phone asking us what she could possibly do. And they did. They came through and helped us get several pallets of water, helped us set up the distribution. President Preckwinkle has assured me, she and I talked Sunday morning. We had a very good conversation. She was well aware of the problem, and she pledged that she will help us in any way she possibly can with our declaration of emergency. Members of the board, does anybody have any comments or questions? Trustee Klein.
Yeah, I came out of this learning a few.
Can you speak into the mic?
Okay, maybe we can turn it on.
Thank you.
I came away, I will never take for granted fresh water in my home again. I will never take Public Works for granted again. And I want to thank Max and his entire crew. I mean, it was a yeoman's job, and I am in awe. I personally want to thank Trustee Kuhn, Trustee Robinson, and our clerk Manal and her kids I watched them, distribute water, and I thought it was great. Thank you, guys. Thank you, man.
Trustee Sucker.
I live in the neighborhood of the water main break in between the two streets, East Prairie and Bennett. I just want to say to my neighbors who are suffering right now that I'm sorry, and that please reach out to your insurance companies and the village to try to get the help you need. I'm thankful to the Public Works Department and all our other departments for the quick and efficient way that they resolved the issue. And it was very difficult circumstances, but most of all, I want to thank the residents of Skokie who were so patient during this process. And it was remarkable to see all the volunteers who came out to help. So thank you.
Trustee Robinson.
I think we get stronger through moments of trauma and tragedy. So I think it did really bring the village together. I do want to, again, just echo my thanks and appreciation and gratitude to the village staff, fire, public works, health and human services, the communications, regional support volunteers, the businesses, just to continue to look at what we can do to support. I really just want to take an extra opportunity to, I wish we had just really connected with the residents more proximately, just more of a human connection. So, I really want to see, hopefully there's never a moment like this again, but just to have some intentionality about connecting one-to-one with, residents who may be impacted by anything in the future. And I say that knowing that my sister lives in the area, and Chief, the fire did go by and knock on the door and give her a case of water, which is good. But I think, again, in those moments, we have to extend extra care to folks who are in deep need. And again, thank you. Amazed by the work that has happened.
And I should have added, we did activate the Medical Reserve Corps. and they supplied a great deal of help as well. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board
I
on
still
this?
have questions, actually.
I'm sorry, Trustee Kuhn.
I want to echo everyone's sentiments and thank everyone in the community. It took a lot of efforts, and everyone played a different role. So I just want to thank everyone for their patience, and Public Works and Fire Department, Health Department, and Marketing Communications. It was really a village-wide effort. I do have a number of questions, and I think it's really more for my understanding, and also I think it would be helpful for the public to understand as well. John, can you speak to that timeline between 5:15 and the Emergency Operations Center activation, and then communication with vital stakeholders as well in terms of how information was relayed to them?
Yes, so at 5:15, there was a call into police that there was water on the street. And then police personnel were dispatched to observe it. So at 5:23, Public Works was contacted and started to assess the situation. And as the situation was understood, telephone calls started between Max Lankard, myself, of course, the water superintendent and the water supervisor were engaged, and so there's a lot of communication going on in order to assess the situation. At around, as it approached 7 o'clock is when it became more known that there was, serious, it was a more than a typical water main break. And so communications started to the point where we wanted to activate the Emergency Operations Center, and then we determined that a boil order needed to occur, and so I was making telephone conversation with superintendents, school superintendents, in order to notify them. The village has an emergency communication system with the school superintendents that was distributed around 7:30, acknowledging that the problem existed and that there was an issue with the water supply. And then the village's EOC team convened for the first time at 7:30 that morning in order to start to access the community development and the fire department and the police department and have all of the different data points that those departments have and be able to support Public Works. Public Works was in the field. They started moving the inlets in order to allow the water to go down. The fire department was there assisting at the police department. And so from 7:30, we were strategizing in the EOC. Communications throughout the community started for the boil order. And so that's kind of how that developed over that time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I appreciate the context. Thank you, because I know there were a number of questions about when parents were notified through the school system that school was going to be canceled, because that was also the time when parents were just doing drop-offs at that time. So I think there
That's
was
right.
some concern about that timeline.
Mm-hmm. For example, when I was on the phone with the 219 superintendent, one campus had water, one didn't. And so the decision had already been made to close one campus, but not the other. And then I was able to communicate our understanding of the severity of the situation. So then they were able to close the second campus, but that was probably around 7:23. And so, that doesn't coincide with the opening of school and drop-offs and, early before school activities. But all of that was occurring between 7 o'clock and 8 a.m.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Max, I have some follow-up questions for you. Earlier, the day before, I think there was another break in that area. And I believe I heard on Sunday there was also a break on Main Street. Can you speak a little bit in terms of how these pipes are connected? If I know there is additional investigation that needs to happen in terms of the cause, but can you speak a little bit in terms of how these pipes are connected and what happened this weekend?
Sure. So on Thursday afternoon, we received a call from passing motorist with respect to water on East Prairie Road, just a little bit south of TJ Maxx, I think was the way it was reported. So essentially ended up being basically at the intersection of Forest View and East Prairie. If I have that intersection correct. It's the same intersection. So what we have is, as I mentioned in the presentation, we have the two 36-inch mains that cross at that intersection. I'm sorry, Emerson. That cross at that intersection, and then running, I'll call it north to south, although East Prairie runs at an angle. In the southbound lane of East Prairie, there's an 8-inch water main that runs north to south. And from a valve vault in that intersection, there was water, as it turns out, coming out of that. So our crew deployed to that at approximately 3 p.m. The call came in around 2:05. We did the Julie request for that. The crew went out to the scene at roughly 3 or 3:30 p.m. Started investigating the valve. Why is there water in the valve vault? So over the course of the evening and into the early morning hours, they were looking for a leak associated with the leaking valve on the presumption that it's on the 8-inch water main. So they did advance 2 excavations that evening, the first one to the south of the valve vault, and then second one to the north of the valve vault. So I alluded to this or talked about this at the press event on Friday. They were not able, they dug down to the main on both sides of the valve vault, so that's the 8-inch main, and were unable to find a leak there. At that point, they were approaching, it was a little after 1 o'clock in the morning at that point. The operators for that crew had been in since 7 a.m. that morning, so technically they'd worked a longer day than we would want them to work. And so given that they had just, done a second excavation, it was that time of day, in the middle of the night, they were advised, button up the scene, barricade it, and return, come in, punch out. We'll go back to the site at 7 a.m. the next morning, those daylight hours, and continue investigating that leak. So at that time, we knew there was water. When they were making the excavations, there was some water coming in from the excavation sidewalls, but it wasn't a significant amount of water, which I would add, a couple things. January and February are the busiest months typically for main break activity. When they get frost in the ground, you get low temperatures, that's when we get the most main breaks. 2, when you're looking for a leak, it's not uncommon to have water in the ground that comes into your excavation holes. So none of these are particularly disturbing to an operator. They're used to encountering this. So when we left the scene Tuesday, it was not as if we left the scene in the condition that we then found it in at 5:30 on Friday morning. And so we were in that same area, but there's somewhere in the vicinity of I don't want to misquote, there's some distance between the 36-inch main, which runs basically along the curb facing of the east curb face of East Prairie, and the 8-inch main, which is sort of in the center of the southbound East Prairie lane. So when we were asked about it on Friday, I said, I don't think that there's a connection between the two, other than we were on Thursday night into Friday morning, we were looking for a minor leak out there that we didn't find. And then Friday morning, we had this happen. What do we think now? Well, clearly what we think now is that the water that was in that valve structure and surfacing from the valve structure on Thursday night into Friday morning was the early leakage from the 36 that was traveling there. And again, as I said, a water leak traveling underground is not uncommon. So that's the background on the Thursday night into Friday morning activities.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yep.
And then the Sunday
Oh, Sunday,
afternoon?
Main Street. We had a leak, again, at a valve vault on Main Street. I believe it was just east of Lincoln. So there's no connection to that, other than it's winter, it's the time of year.
Okay, thank you. Patrick, I have a question for you as well. I know communication was really critical this weekend, and not everybody is on social media. And then trying to get information out to residents in as timely a manner as possible, recognizing you have different generations, you have older folks who may not be connected online, language barriers as well. I really appreciated the 911 system because I got multiple messages via text, email, phone call, so that was super helpful. But there were also people who said they weren't getting information. And so I'm wondering, are there ways that we can automatically add resident information to the 911 system, or is that something they have to opt in, or are there ways that we can encourage people to, now that we've been through this, to get onto the system?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that was interesting, over the course of the weekend, we gained 2,000 subscribers to the Smart 911 system. So we went from 6,000 to close to 9,000. So nothing like an emergency to make people want to sign up and get those alerts. I will say we did refer people back to the village website throughout the weekend, which has the translation function, being able to translate that web page where all the information was into more than 100 languages. We also shared the information on the cable channel and through the radio, so those were some of the non-online sources that we used. And I believe some outreach was done through the fire department and the health department to some of the vulnerable facilities and residents that they know of. So I'm sure there are things that we will hear about that we could put into our game plan for next time. But I think we will certainly be encouraging people to sign up for Smart 911. I also want to mention too, and I think I mentioned this in my comments, is that the vendor for the village's Smart 911 system will periodically import all Skokie landlines into the system. So not everyone has a landline, but if you do, you don't have to opt into the system. You'll automatically get a phone call. So.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just punctuate, I'd really like to punctuate this. The Smart 911 system is so important to us for communication, and so if individuals have landlines, they're automatically in the system. But any emails or cell phone numbers need to be self-subscribed into the Smart 911 system of the village, and people can do that through the website. So I just want to punctuate that. Any cell phone, email, please self-initiate subscribing into our Smart 911 system, but know that landlines are automatically entered. I just wanted to
Great, that's
punctuate
helpful.
that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So share it on social media. Everybody share it, like it, spread the word about
Yes.
that.
Then I have one final question. Mayor, the information earlier about reporting damages, I'm wondering, would that also include not only houses but cars as well? Thinking about people who may be uninsured or underinsured, and then also would there be potential time limits in terms of reporting?
Well, we need to get the information as fast as possible so we can use it to support our declaration with the county and with the state. John, do you have the specifics? We have a form. It's not long, but include everything that was damaged. So we have a comprehensive idea of there were automobiles that were damaged. We got reports of some flooding. Everything. Please give us as much information as you can and estimate. Just you don't have to hire an estimator. Do an estimate like you did for an insurance claim.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
John, did you have anything to add?
I think you answered it very well. The important part is to communicate with us, and until we reach a threshold that is deemed significant by the emergency management folks at the county and state level, then we won't be able to, provide financial assistance. So it's so important to reach the threshold that is meaningful for people to share their information, their losses with us.
All right, thank you.
Is there anybody who wishes? Yes, sir. If you come to the microphone. Everybody who wishes to speak would be allotted 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure when you're going to start the timer. I'm going to tell you this might go beyond 3 minutes, and I hope that you will support it, being that it seems like everybody else who's got up here before has had plenty of time to express kind of the high-fiving you guys are doing with each other and the pats on the back. So I'm hoping you're going to allow me to finish. It's some of the things you guys have talked about tonight, and I'm incredibly gracious. Oh, Michael Lickety, 9300 block of Bennett. It's incredibly, I guess, pleasing to hear that you want to know about all the damages. Mr. Lockerbie, and if I'm pronouncing your last name correct, if not. Yes. You talked about the Skokie spirit. I thought I was coming up here to start with the theme of neglect, disappoint, but I think it's moved into trust. I represent the majority of the homes on 9300 Bennett, where every summer, when the rains come, it swells and the water rises. And we've seen city people out there before, like, hey, they're dressing the manholes, the inlets. And we're out there with our rakes, making sure that everything is clutter-free, trying to protect our own investments. When we awoke Friday morning at 6 o'clock, hearing horns honking outside, I got to tell you, the first thing I thought it was my neighbor's high school kids coming to pick them up, and I was coming down to say, guys, really? Go up to the door, ask them. I came down to one of the scenes I've never seen in my life. I hope to never see again. Our house was encased in ice. Hear that again. Our home was encased in ice. We live up from Bennett on a carport, so there's a natural incline. It's about 2 to 3 feet off that floor of the street. Our home was encased in ice. 6 inches of ice surrounding the house all the way down, and I appreciate the pictures you're showing, but just so you get a better idea, my wife's car and the people on our street had ice to this level. Ice. So I bring in this trust thing again. We saw eventually trucks on McCormick, but then we saw McCormick flood, and that stopped. We started getting to a point of fear. Is the power going out? And we're a family of means. So, meaning we're able to walk around, we're able to get out. I walked out to my wife's car at that point, 6 o'clock, trying to get in it. It was filled with ice water. It wasn't going anywhere. It was the car's electrical system that was beeping and going off. So it wasn't any, kind of just a teenager. It was the car is going off. So we realized at that point, we're in trouble. We need help. It wasn't until about noon that I decided, after trying to get to my wife's car in knee-deep ice water, I gotta find people, because nobody, noon guys, 9300 block, noon. So we're 7 hours after. I start going out, I see people, I'm like, God, are you with the city, you guys gotta come and pull the inlets on our block on Bennett. It's coming up, it's up over the cars, we're gonna flood, please come. Couldn't find anyone. I eventually went out to East Prairie. By the way, this is between Manor and Lyons, not Emerson. All that water. And the people out there who said, hey, we're not with the city, we're hired, maybe this contractor is talking about, they told us at about 2 in the afternoon, that's when I saw them, we haven't been able to shut the water off. And I said, oh my God, this water's still coming. They said, yeah. I started going to every city employee that I thought and said, guys, please, we're desperate. We need help. We're about to flood. It hasn't happened yet, but we're about to flood, which has never happened before. Nobody came. We felt neglected. We felt hidden. It was getting scary. There are people like I said, we could have gotten up, walked out and froze and dealt with all that kind of stuff. There are people on our block who have babies. People on our block who have people who are fighting for their lives, maybe attached to machines. I can only imagine the fear they had that, oh my God, because nobody came. The first person we saw from Skokie was the police department, or was the fire department, which I'm very grateful for. They were able, and I have to have a feeling it's because that's when they could access our block. Not by fire truck, walking, because the streets were encased in ice. So it was about 3:30-ish. We have documentation pictures just in case you guys all need this. We're signing it with the risk. I really appreciate what you guys are saying now and what you set up. But at 6 o'clock when I went on the website, there was nothing. The first thing that came out on the website, just tangentially speak, was about the boil order. That was the first thing. Because I'd called 911 and they said, call Public Works after 7. I was like, okay. Obviously, your phones were jammed at that point. I get that. We got no information that way. So eventually, about 3:30, 4 o'clock, we see somebody, from the city with a detector. Again, this gentleman's walking around in the ice water up to his thighs, looking for the inlets to pull out. And I was like, oh my God. I so wish that I could say better late than never. But it's too late. We flooded 4 times by that time. 4 times. Having all that rush. And I got to tell you, we have superhero neighbors. They all came with their vacs, right? And they were helping. And we just felt that community of that. That was our Skokie spirit. Our neighbors who recognized that we were in trouble. Not Skokie. Not anybody from the city. And I'm trying not to be dramatic here, guys, but I'm telling you from a human side of what happened on the block of 9300 Bennett, that we sat there and waited and waited. So eventually, like I said, about 3:34, they pulled the inlets, and everything started rushing out. And I told the guy, and it's not fair to him, man, I told him, again, like I just said, I wish I could say better late than never. But it's too late. Our place is flooded. We now have mitigation, right? Pulling everything out. I'm not going to get emotional here, right? But if you've ever had loss in like flood or anything, and this is not California fires. I get it, man. We are not that. We are not the floods of Mississippi. I get that. But we lost a lot of personal mementos, pictures. All the other stuff can get replaced, right? I'm not worried about that kind of stuff. The carpeting, the drywall, all that's going to get taken care of. It's the feeling that we didn't feel seen. We didn't feel heard. We felt neglected, scared, disappointed. So I'm so happy to hear that you guys opened up these lines of, hey, tell us everything that happened, tell us what you got, tell us what you lost. We're so appreciative. And all I ask is going forward that you do hear all these things. And what we're looking for, right, is like we lost our cars. We lost everything in the basement. We're not Subaru people looking for Mercedes. We're not looking to put additions onto our homes. We're looking to have that restored just because it was not our fault. So going forward, I hope that you've heard the way I've said this. I don't blame anyone. I'm so happy that you guys have this Skokie spirit. I'm telling you, I feel it now with everybody saying what we're going to do, and we're open to hearing all these things. I hope the accountability in this world where it is hard to find accountability, I hope that we see that from the village, because I think that will restore the trust that we've always had, right? You guys, and I think everybody gets the same thing. It's like, you just expect these things to be in play, and it's kind of the no-see-ums. Like, you expect, like when you call for the public works that they're going to be there, and it's kind of like, that's what we're looking for, is to have this accountability restore our trust. because we felt neglected. I appreciate you listening to me. I appreciate you feel this from my heart. I just hope that you guys hear us and help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Yefim Cutler. I live in Skokie for over 40 years, and I've never seen anything of that magnitude, that water breakdown. The first time it happened, unfortunately, I live in the area where it was not flooded like you, but I really was moved by what you just said. So it was very moving. But I imagine when it was happening, is people who work in water trying to fix it. And there was, I found communication, very quick. I use the AI, by the way, and found this meeting that was going online. It was very comforting. There is people, mayor spoke and other people spoke, and it was very comforting. There's people who are working on it, trying to address the problem. And I felt, my goodness, people, this brutal cold weather. Somebody is standing in the water and working, trying to fix this problem. And they couldn't find where it was. It was, but what I would like to say, thank you to everybody who was working on that. Again, I was. To me, it was very comforting, because I was not in your position. If I was in your position, I would feel different. But it was very comforting that the first time in over 40 years, this breakdown of this magnitude happened in Skokie. Never happened before. Maybe we need to have some kind of future plan for infrastructure improvement. But again, I want to thank everybody who was communicating and working on it, and especially people who were working in this brutal weather and trying to fix the problem, find the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Max, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time we've had a transmission line break like this, and we will work to restore your trust. I can't put it any better than Mr. Cutler did. It was very moving, and to say that we feel your pain, it's the feeling that you've lost control. I know what it is to flood. It's happened to me. I'm not comparing my circumstances with yours, believe me. But there's a feeling that you have no control, and what do you do now? And we will work very hard, I promise you.
I so appreciate
And hopefully we'll never have something like this happen again.
No, I know I'm speaking after and I should be up there. I'm sorry, but I really do appreciate the empathy I feel in your work. I want you to hear that.
Thank you. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Schmidt. I live on Lion Street, which is also hard hit, but these wonderful gentlemen are around the corner from me. And I want to speak on the fact that also the traumatic thing. I have 8-year-old triplets. I woke up at 5:15 to go to work and was getting them to daycare. My daughter comes running to me, Mom, there's lights on outside. So I go check. My cars are underwater. All my dad's 2 cars and my car. Couldn't get to work, couldn't get to daycare. I'm like, okay, they're gonna fix this. 12:24 is when they opened the drain on our street. Myself, my neighbors Kevin, and my neighbors Chris were walking around, and you'll probably see me with my trash bags on and my yellow hat, walking around trying to find the drain because we were gonna open it ourselves. But we could not do it. It was covered in ice, and even a work truck came by, they were digging around, and they were sitting on their truck. And I have a picture of them sitting on their truck, and then they left. So that's when we decided to try and open it ourselves. We couldn't find it. My 8-year-old daughter hands me a shovel over the water so that I could find the drain. My kids are traumatized. My autistic child said last night she couldn't sleep because she didn't want to flood again. My child who was sick from school today because she has anxiety, she called me 5 times during the school day to ask if I was okay. It's very traumatic. My 81-year-old dad was out there trying to get the ice moved. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional because my kids are now traumatized. They saw the water getting close. It came within 3 feet of our house. We did not flood, but it came within 3 feet, and they kept on seeing it rising. They see me in the water, and the water rising, and they're freaking out about me and hoping I'm okay. We did not go through what this gentleman did with losing everything in their basement, but the mental thing is also important to know, that the trauma that everybody who suffered, not just on our blocks, but everywhere, that when they lost stuff, yes, we can replace our cars. Insurance isn't going to cover my dad's cars because they're old, so he has to buy a new car. He's retired. How is he going to afford a new car? I owe $25,000 on my car. It's done. I'm waiting to hear back from insurance companies. I'm waiting to hear back from the car places, but I'm in limbo. I don't know what to do. So I just wanted you to know that. I want to thank everybody who came by our door, the aldermen, or the trustees who came by our house, the fire department who dropped off water. My neighbors came by and heard about, I guess I'm the only one with triplets in the area. I don't know, but people heard triplets and they all called me. But the neighborhood was great. You guys were great, but I wish it would have happened a little sooner. I mean, to wait from 5 o'clock to 12:35 or 12:24 to get my car even down so we can see what the damage is. And then their street was after that, because our street went down and then it was their street that went down, and even that, it didn't go all the way down for a while after that. So anyway, but I just wanted you guys to hear from me about the traumatic effect that is also traumatic, as well as loss of property. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Please feel free to share your individual stories with us online or in an email. It's important that we know that, so as John and the staff and the board are doing the after-action analysis, we know what happened. And so we can take that into consideration as we try to plan for the future. Hopefully, we're not going to ever have something like this again. And I want to reiterate something, a point that John made. We are going to have a company come in, take a look, give us their analysis, and help us plan. This has never happened in the village before, but I can assure you we're not the only ones who are interested in finding out what happened and what kind of preventive measures can you take. The mayors of all of the neighboring municipalities called me. I had very good conversations with them, and I appreciate their friendship. But the one thing they do want to know is, how did this happen, so they can begin to take a look at their infrastructure as well. So it's important that you share with us your experience so we can take that into consideration. So. Trustee Kuhn.
Mayor, first of all, I want to thank those who did share with their public comments, and it does make me think about the support systems that are going to be available for people who have been directly impacted by this, not only with the damages, but social support. And then, as people need to get back to a normal way of life with their cars not being mobile, the time between how to navigate getting those adjustments and So whatever comes out of this, I want to make sure that we're also taking into consideration the support services as well, for those who are directly impacted during this difficult time.
And we have a motion and a second, correct? Yes, okay. Are there any other comments? If not, okay, what we need then is a motion to approve the declaration of emergency. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Robinson. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes. Let's take just a 5-minute break to give the cameras an opportunity to reset. order.
We're still missing Manal and, oh,
Where?
oh, yeah, I can't, Manal and Cam.
Your mic's on. Your mic wasn't on before.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The meeting will come to order, please.
Yeah, we on number 4? No, that was.
No.
Is it consent agenda? Consent?
We're on proclamations.
Correct.
Next item on the agenda are a series of proclamations, 3. The first one is Trustee Kuhn.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas Chapter 58 of the Skokie Village Code provides for human relations as a matter of right in the village, and whereas the United States of America is a nation founded by immigrants seeking refuge from oppression, discrimination, and religious persecution, and the village of Skokie has a long and proud history of being a place that welcomes immigrants into its community and prohibiting any and all kinds of bigotry, hate crimes, intolerance, and discrimination. And whereas the village of Skokie recognizes the value and contribution that immigrants make to the community, be it those who immigrated decades ago and have remained a valuable part of the community ever since, or those who have joined the village of Skokie mere weeks ago and strive to enrich it. And whereas the village of Skokie is and has always been a community of immigrants, making up nearly 40% of the population of the village of Skokie and hailing from over 90 countries, and whereas there is now significant fear amongst immigrants throughout the country as turmoil has created a level of uncertainty with regards to universal access to local municipal services and police and fire protection. And whereas the village of Skokie is cognizant of effects of having any portion of our community living in constant fear, not knowing whether it is safe to make contact with emergency and other village services, and seeks to allay recent fears in their already difficult lives. And whereas the village of Skokie considers immigrants to be unequivocally a matter of human rights, and that fundamentally everyone deserves to live with an expectation of basic safety and security. And whereas the village of Skokie has always maintained and will continue to maintain a policy to offer services regardless of immigration status and to not inquire about such status for any reason. And whereas the mayor and the board of trustees reiterate their support for Chapter 58, Article 1 of the Skokie Village Code, therefore, George Van Dusen, mayor of the village of Skokie, in conjunction with the board of trustees, do hereby reaffirm our commitment to our immigrant neighbors and friends as we did in 2017.
Let the trustee finish. Just take a seat. We'll call on you.
Passed this 18th day of February 2025. Mayor, while I do appreciate the proclamation and the reaffirmation of our welcoming ordinance from 2017, I know that you also shared a memo with the Board of Trustees as well. There were some recommendations that the Senior Policy Council from Illinois Coalition of Immigrant and Refugee Rights provided to us just prior to our last board meeting. And so if you can, I don't know if you just want to summarize the points there, and I do have some follow-up questions regarding that, if that's
Sure.
appropriate.
Mr. Tao, with the Immigration Coalition, made some suggestions to us. Most of the suggestions are either contained in our ordinance, in the police chief's guidance to the officers interpreting the Trust Act, the Voices Act, the Way Forward Act, or in village policy, generally speaking. In the chief's guidance, he states the following: under prohibited activities, assisting immigration enforcement, no compliance with immigration detainers, administrative warrant, or custody transfers without a criminal warrant. No sharing of information about individuals in custody, including release dates. Under stops, arrests, and detention, no stops, searches, arrests, or detentions based solely on immigration status. And then the chief reiterates, ICE administrative warrants do not justify arrests or detentions. Under equal treatment, individuals in custody cannot be denied services, benefits, or programs based on immigration status. And then, under consular access, facilities must notify foreign nationals of their right to contact consulates within 48 hours of booking. Visa certifications, U visa, T visa certification requests for crime victims must be completed within 90 business days, 21 days for expedited cases. Denials require written explanation and an appeal process. Key takeaways, and I think this is very important because this is what we try to emphasize. Focus on public safety. Avoid involvement in civil immigration enforcement. Build community trust. Treat all individuals equitably, regardless of immigration status. Follow reporting requirements. Ensure timely submissions to the Illinois Attorney General. Support victims. Provide consular access and process visa certifications promptly. And one of the things that we try to do, and these are the chief's words, aim to strengthen trust with immigrant communities by limiting local law enforcement's involvement in federal civil immigration enforcement and supporting victims of crime. We do not share our village database and information with third-party brokers. You don't find that in our immigration ordinance because that is part of our general policy. We don't share information on any resident. Even in FOIA requests, you'll notice that we redact personal information. It was suggested that we not enforce ICE administrative warrants. We don't. There was a question about custody transfers. We do not engage in custody transfers without a criminal warrant, not civil, criminal warrant. Mr. Tao suggested the village not participate in immigration enforcement operations. We agree and we do not. In fact, I'm repeating again, but the chief says in his guidance, no compliance with immigration detainers, administrative warrants, or custody transfers without a criminal warrant. So in our guidance as well as in our immigration ordinance, we seek, and I want to thank Mr. Tao. He described our ordinance as strong. He has been a good partner. When we wrote the 2017 ordinance, we consulted with him. And this last time, John participated in a meeting, I believe it was at the governor's office request. That's right. At which Mr. Tao took the lead. And if I understand correctly, I wasn't at the meeting. Nothing that was suggested to be in a model ordinance crafted by the coalition is not in our ordinance already.
I appreciate the feedback and also the work that our police chief has already done as far as providing guidance to our police officers. I am interested in amending our immigration ordinance so that it is explicitly codified in our ordinance, and therefore enshrined in law. And then the other part of it is that we want to make sure it's explicit so that we're future-proofing it as well, and this, regardless of who's here, and then continue to work with the Illinois Coalition of Immigrant Refugee Rights as the situation is evolving, so that we can continue to identify where there are gaps and opportunities to strengthen that as well.
So let me understand. The motion would be to state explicitly that the chief's guidance of 2025 and immigration is supported by the village's ordinance and is part of the ordinance itself, which would be section 58-8.
Correct, and also continue to work with the Illinois Coalition to
Yes.
identify. Thank you.
Sure. We need a second to the motion. Second, Trustee Robinson. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, sir. Sorry.
A lot of what the ordinance says, I kind of agree with all the nice language and everything. You know, if someone wants a flu shot or a library card, yeah, give it to them. We know from the press that many countries have emptied out their jails and they have come to America. Most immigrants, illegal immigrants, are honest, but there's a lot of them doing crime here. A lot of them were criminals in their foreign countries. Now, the mayor kind of recited a lot of language. I don't quite know what it means, even if I'm an attorney, but what I'm hearing is that, in essence, this is a declaration that our police department will not cooperate with ICE or other federal authorities. They won't cooperate with our federal government. That's what I'm hearing, in essence, you know, the weight of the declaration. And it looks to me, from what the mayor said, that Skokie will do everything possible, legally possible, won't do anything illegal, hopefully, but it will do everything legally possible to shield criminals, whether criminals from their foreign countries or criminals here. They will do everything possible to shield criminals from ICE and the federal government. That's what I'm hearing. Maybe I'm hearing wrong. Maybe the language is complicated. I'm misunderstanding it. But it looks like we're going to be one of these sanctuary cities, and we might as well put a sign out, safe for criminals. Now, every immigrant is not a criminal, but I worry about the criminals. And heaven help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, my name is Maggie Vandermeer. I'm going to try to actually speak off the cuff here a little bit, even though I have a written comment. First of all, I want to thank you, Trustee Kuhn, for bringing up, both at the last board meeting, bringing up the community concerns, but also at this meeting, bringing up the need to update the ordinance, and specifically Mr. Sau's contributions, both to the 2017 ordinance and his willingness to contribute again. I just really echo what you said about how, you know, it's fine to have guidelines and, you know, this is our policy, this is what we already do, these are the guidelines, this is what the police chief is telling the police officers to do, but we need it codified in the law. And I really think that that is what Mr. Sau is also telling us. I also, you know, was on the email he sent where he made all of his recommendations, and I asked him some follow-up questions, and I think you have already probably received public comments with his responses. But it is clear that there are important updates to be made. And so I hope that that the amendment is not just based on what the police chief advised, although I do also appreciate that information, and I think it would be great if that could be shared publicly. I think it would be comforting to people. I think that Mr. Sal is an expert. He's offering to help. Let's take his recommendations. It seems like a no-brainer. I just want to say, these sort of ideas about immigrants and criminals, I don't even know what to say about that, but there was a recent incident of hate crime, or probably not called hate crime, someone leaving hate mail on some Afghani permanent residents' door in Skokie. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that people are emboldened to do in this climate we're in. And so I do really appreciate this proclamation. I can tell that you all really care about this issue. Just please put it into the law. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Roxanne Salgado. I live on the 5,000 block of Jarvis. First, thank you to the village for your response to the water break. My sympathy goes out to the residents greatly impacted by the flooding. I'm not on social media, so Trustee Kuhn, you mentioned, offering some information on how other community members can help. At least put that somewhere on the village website so that I can go ahead and also contribute. But tonight I'm here as a child of immigrants. And I want to say, Trustee Klein, I'm very familiar with how to navigate an environment without clean water. It was very reminiscent for me as when I would go back to at my dad's ranch in Mexico, where we would spend our winter vacations, and it was very familiar to me. So I was happy to share strategies for my children on how to handle those situations, and it also provided some insight to them and how fortunate they are to live somewhere where they don't have to worry about that on a daily basis. But I do want to, I'm here in the same spirit as Trustee Robinson mentioned, which is that need of a sense of community. And in the last village board meeting, a group of residents requested for the village to strengthen their welcoming ordinance. And I really appreciate Trustee Kuhn for pushing it to be codified. I think there is a lack of sense of community, right? And we need to see it from you as leaders of this town to make sure that all of our families are protected regardless of their status, and not to buy into the rhetoric of immigrants are criminals. We've lived among immigrants in Skokie. We're very proud of our immigrant families here, our diversity. So why don't you show it by following the suggestions of Fred Tao, who has been helping the ordinance in Evanston. I don't know why it should be hard if you are doing this in the sense of ensuring that everyone feels welcome in Skokie. So just want to thank you, Trustee Kuhn, for pushing that, and I hope that you all consider that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Lauren Grodnicki. I have a question and a comment. For the question, can you please distinguish between an administrative warrant and some other type of warrant that you might cooperate? Criminal warrant?
That's an administrative or is something that comes out of an agency. Criminal warrant is a judicial warrant for somebody's arrest because there is suspicion that they have committed a crime.
So follow-up question, would you you're saying you will cooperate with the criminal warrants, but not the administrative warrants?
We must, that's law.
Okay, so then for my comment, this isn't the first time something like this has happened where members of the public come up here and they have some misconceptions and the board just sits there silently and listens and lets them say those things. And there are a lot of people who are watching this at home. So I wish you guys would.
I was actually going to follow up
Okay,
before
thank
you
you.
came out, so. And Jim, maybe you can provide some legal guidance on this, but my understanding is that with administrative warrants, there is a lower standard of probable cause, and therefore there are certain things that they can or cannot do.
That's correct, Trustee. And as the mayor said, criminal warrants, the person's been accused of committing a crime. They've either gone before a judge and they've gotten a warrant. You know, there's been some due process where an allegation has been made and somebody has looked at it and decided there's probable cause to arrest this person for a crime. Skokie, all municipalities, federal law prohibits the Village of Skokie or any municipality from not cooperating when there is a criminal warrant out for someone's arrest. However, when we're dealing solely with ICE, they're going after individuals based on immigration status. That's not a crime, although civilly, they're not supposed to be in the country, and so they can get warrants or they can go to administrative law judges and try to get subpoenas to have these people arrested. In a situation like that, the Village of Skokie Police Department will not help federal ICE employees or agents or other officers from the federal government locating somebody or setting up a roadblock or knocking on a door. We will not do that unless we are presented with a criminal warrant from a magistrate or a grand jury or something to that effect.
And from what I hear and understand from that is that public safety continues to be paramount. It's something that the village is still adhering to in terms of honoring those criminal warrants, because that happens regardless of immigration status.
Correct. Absolutely. And the reverse of that is there are situations where immigrants are victims of crime. And the last thing the Village of Skokie or the police department wants is for someone who is an immigrant to be a victim of a crime and not come forward or not make a phone call or not say, I was a witness to this, because then Skokie's going to become more dangerous. Or then there's crime will continue if the police don't have a relationship with all of its residents, regardless of their citizenship. And for that reason, additional reason, it behooves the city and the village to work with all communities, all individuals, regardless of status, because we want their help in solving crimes.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Well,
Emmy Yamauchi, I live at 4953 Oakton. I also would like to support the codification of this resolution. I also know that at the previous meeting, there was some discussion about whether or not to have kind of a Know Your Rights gathering or seminar. I understand there were reservations about that, but I think that it's also possible, if you would consider putting it out in the Scoop or whatever, links. There's an excellent ACLU video about Know Your Rights. You can put the toll-free number for ICER, for the Immigrant and Refugee, excuse me, Rights Center, and that would be helpful at least for people to have if we don't have an in-person seminar sort of thing. And lastly,
we did do one.
Pardon me?
We did do one. Was it a week? We all attended.
There was a Stronger Together event that happened at Sketchbook about maybe a week ago. And so there was there were a number of municipalities that came together in the North Shore area. People came out, at least a few hundred folks who came out wanting to be engaged, and so that.
Okay, so there were immigrants.
Yeah.
There were refugees and immigrants.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it would be nice to have it out on our newsletter as well,
Well, we
especially
did.
a link
We
to a
did put it
video.
in the newsletter.
Yeah, I did see that communication go out as well, but that's something that we can
We did
certainly
do it.
reiterate on as well.
Okay,
did
no,
put
but
it
like
out.
links to the videos, because I think it's harder sometimes for people for whom English is not their first language to read it, but seeing a video that actually has figures walking you through the thing. Also, my understanding of signed judicial criminal warrants is that they are for a specific person, right? So in theory, if ICE were to go to a school or a church or whatever and present that warrant, and let's say there are 15, 20 other people taking sanctuary, refuge in that place, if the person named in that warrant says, okay, here I am, I will go voluntarily, in theory, ICE should not have the right to enter, this is a question, to enter that hospital or church or wherever to just do a general dragnet sweep.
Right, are you talking a criminal or an
I'm
administrative?
talking about a signed criminal warrant signed by a judge
If
for a
there's-
specific individual or individuals, but where there are other collateral people there who may or may not have legal documentation. But if the person named in that warrant or persons named in the warrant, turn themselves in, say, okay, we're coming out the door, here we are, does ICE still have the right to enter that building?
The federal government can do a lot, whether, the Village of Skokie has limited authority to tell the federal government what they can and cannot do, but that they would not have any help or assistance from the Village of Skokie regarding anybody who did not have a criminal warrant that was presented for them. Now, whether the federal government decides we're dragging everybody here, that's something that's sort of out of the village's control.
Okay, but would the pastor or the chief administrator of the hospital or whatever, would they be within their rights to say, we complied with your warrant, leave our private property?
Yes, they would, although.
No, I understand what you're saying.
If the federal government decides, we're not going to abide by what you think, that is a potential problem.
Okay, but they would be within their rights to say.
Yes.
Please leave.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was
Last
just
but
gonna-
not least, it seems to me that in the United States, we're perfectly capable of birthing and raising our own criminals, so, Sorry, did you want?
No,
Please.
Sorry, I just thought of a follow-up question based on Emmy's comments. So in that situation where ICE tries to come to, say, the hospital, and the hospital says, well, the person who you have the warrant for already turned themselves in and you have them, you can't come in, and the hospital tries to call Skokie police to come help them keep ICE out, what happens in that situation?
I believe this was Chief Barnes addressed this. If the hospital calls the Skokie Police Department, they will respond. They will respond and they will try to determine what is going on. And based on what's happening, they will try to assist any individual who needs help from the police. So I would certainly suggest that anybody, if they feel threatened or they feel they don't know what's going on, call 911, call the police will show up. Whether the police can prevent the feds from doing what the feds want to do is a separate story, but you can at least call the police so that you will have protection from the Village of Skokie.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add, there are quite a few community members who've been trained for rapid response. Trustee Cohen and I have also been trained where in those particular situations, people would call the rapid response number, and there would be representatives to show up to explain and support to whoever's being impacted how to respond in the moment.
Is there a list of people, so like, let's say that the hospital administrator or whatever doesn't know that you are trained that way, is there a place they can easily go and find a list of phone numbers?
Right now, the best resource is just going to the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. There's a wealth of resources there. They're also coordinating with local communities that either already have in place or establishing a rapid response team that is trained and can handle the documentation of the incident so that it can be fed back and reported to the coalition so that they can develop a response strategy to that.
Okay, thank you.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sudker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes. Next item is Trustee Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to read the proclamation for Black History Month. I am black, proud to be black, and super happy to be able to read this proclamation. Whereas Black History Month is an opportunity to share the historical and present contributions of African Americans, and whereas during Black History Month, we reflect and celebrate on the countless achievements and contributions made by African Americans to the village of Skokie's cultural, economic, political, and social development. And whereas Black History Month was first proposed by African American scholar and fraternity brother of mine, Omega Psi Phi, Dr. Carter G. Woodson in 1926, and seeks to rightfully restore the struggles and triumphs from African Americans in the national narrative. And whereas this year, the theme is Legacy and Impact, where events spotlight support for Black businesses and highlights the accomplishments and contributions made to our economy and history. And whereas the village of Skokie recognizes the immense strength, resolve, and perseverance of the African American community, as well as the endless contributions and advances that it has made and continues to make in Skokie and the world. We see this greatness woven into the fabric of our nation, and through it know that we are not trapped by the mistakes of history. Now, therefore I, Mayor Van Dusen, Mayor of the Village of Skokie, do hereby proclaim February 2025 as Black History Month on this day, 18th of February.
Thank you. And now I get to read one. And this one is a great pleasure for me. Whereas Howard Meyer has served with dignity the village of Skokie and the Skokie Chamber of Commerce for over 20 years, greatly enhancing the village's economic development and business community. Whereas Howard Meyer was raised in Lincolnwood, is a proud graduate of Niles West High School and the University of Illinois, Chicago, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Education and Psychology. I think you needed the psychology prior to, quite a few times, Howard. Whereas Howard and his wife Karen reside in Gurnee with their precious puppy Marigold. But you didn't know that, did you? They have raised 3 children and have recently welcomed their first grandchild. And whereas Howard over the years has grown the Skokie Chamber of Commerce to over 600 members representing the North Shore community. Under Howard's leadership, the Chamber has orchestrated numerous community events, including but not limited to the village's State of the Village, the Legislative Forum, ribbon-cutting receptions, business after hours, Skokie Power Partner Network, Women in Business Sessions, Network Now, Breakfast, Skokie's Monday Night Cruise in Car Show, and the ever-popular Wednesday on the Green concert series. And whereas Howard has been a member of the village's Economic Development Commission, Consumer Affairs, and the Plan Commission Housing Subcommittee. And whereas the village of Skokie and members of the Skokie Chamber business community have benefited enormously from the dedication, expertise, and resilience of Howard. Now, therefore, I, George Van Dusen, Mayor of the Village of Skokie, do hereby proclaim February 18, 2025 as Howard Meyer Recognition Day. And we thank you for your patience. Now, you've got a choice. You can stay standing or you can sit down, but you're going to be getting up again. State Senator Villavalum is in Springfield, but Vitan is here with us. Vitan, did you? Yes, please. And then is Commissioner Morita here, or you're here for the commission? Would you like to go to the microphone also?
Mr. Mayor, trustees, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present this Senate proclamation for Howard. My name is Vitan. I'm Senator Ron Villavalom's Chief of Staff, and like you said, unfortunately the senator's in Springfield, so he couldn't be here to present this proclamation on his own. So I'd like to read it on his behalf and on behalf of the Illinois State Senate. So a proclamation presented by State Senator Ron Villavalom and State Representative Kevin Olkel, honoring Howard Meyer on his retirement from the Skokie Chamber of Commerce, presented this 18th day of February 2025. Whereas the members of the Illinois Senate are pleased to congratulate Howard Meyer on the occasion of his retirement after 20 years of service as the President and CEO of the Skokie Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and whereas Mr. Meyer worked many years in the business and nonprofit community, from working at a children's campus to being a business director at a large religious congregation, which led him to joining the Chamber in 2004 as Executive Director, and whereas he is recognized for his commitment to fiscal responsibility, organizational management, development, and programming, and whereas during his time with the Chamber, Mr. Meyer continued to make strides as he increased the level and quality of the programming to bolster businesses and engage members, and whereas Mr. Meyer is a respected member of the community for his ongoing efforts to continue investing into the success of businesses within the Chamber, and whereas Mr. Meyer is valued by his community and colleagues for all his achievements as someone who was always a team player and a leader, and be it further proclaimed by the Senate of the 104th General Assembly of the State of Illinois that we recognize Howard Meyer and his retirement from the Skokie Chamber of Commerce, and be it further proclaimed that a suitable copy of this resolution be presented to Howard Meyer as a symbol of our esteem and respect. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Village Board. My name is Jared Davis. I am the Cook County Commissioner Josina Morita's Deputy Director. She sends her regrets that she cannot be here this evening to do this herself, but she did want to surprise Howard, and hopefully he is surprised with a resolution from the Board of Commissioners of Cook County, Illinois, sponsored by the Honorable Josina Morita, Cook County Board of Commissioners. In honor of Howard Meyer's 20 years of service to the Skokie Chamber of Commerce, whereas Howard Meyer is a Niles West graduate from University of Illinois, Chicago graduate, and whereas Howard is a professional in the nonprofit and business community, having served various organizations in a management and leadership capacity during his 30-year career, including his experience with the children's camps and conference centers and business directors for large religious congregations, excuse me, and whereas Howard Meyer joined the Skokie Chamber of Commerce staff as executive director at the end of 2004, whereas since joining the chamber, Howard has directed a renaissance which has included increasing the level of quality of chamber programming and a true dedication to the success of member businesses, and whereas the Illinois Association of Chamber Executives awarded Howard his Accredited Chamber Executive, ACE, designation in 2017, whereas in honor to his 15 years of service to the chamber, the board unanimously elevated his title to President and CEO at the beginning of 2020, and whereas Howard serves as Vice Chairman of the Village of Skokie Economic Development Commission, a board member as the Skokie Community Foundation, and he is a 17-year member of the Village of Skokie Consumer Affairs Commission, whereas Howard has brought a commitment to sound fiscal and organizational management, business development, and programming, as well as dedication to customer service, membership development, growing your business, and community outreach. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Cook County Board of Commissioners does hereby thank Howard Meyer for his decades of service and his deep compassion for Skokie, and celebrates and honors him as he embarks on his next level and next chapter.
We love you.
Thank you so much. Of course. Thank you so much. May I say a word?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. I'm very humbled by this recognition. Trustees, Mayor, Vitan, Josina's office. It has been an honor to serve this community and to grow the area's businesses as president and CEO for the Skokie Chamber. As important to me are all the friendships that I've made with all of you and the people in the room, and thank you to my family and friends for being here. Even though I'm stepping away from the Skokie Chamber of Commerce at this time, I'm still going to be here to serve the community and serve you in my capacity now as the Director of Employment and Business Partnerships for Jewish Child and Family Services. They've recently consolidated all of their vocational divisions under one division, and I'll be serving people from Jewish Vocational Service, the Jewish Employment Network, Duman Opportunity Center, helping people with developmental disabilities find jobs, and also very relevant in this day and age, Highest Immigration Aid Society, their vocational division helping recent immigrants find jobs. I'll be going out to the area businesses in the capacity of workforce development and continuing to hopefully contribute to the village I love so much and the surrounding communities. So thank you again for this honor. Thank you.
Howard, thank you. And I understand there's a reception in your honor at Village Inn.
Yes.
Starting now.
Thank you, Diana.
Yeah.
So,
So we'll take a short break, so everybody except the village board. You're not quite out of here yet, but we may see you in a little while.
I like that so much.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you
And
so
thanks, everybody, for coming this evening. Just a
minute, yeah, a minute or two.
The meeting will come to order. Next item on the agenda is item B under The village manager's report, John Lockerbie.
Thank you,
John?
Mayor Van Duzen and trustees. This item is regarding the implementation of a municipally supported community land trust. The village board expressed interest in creating a land trust. This is a mechanism that promotes affordable home ownership and funding housing rehabilitation programs. Funding is primarily through any fee in lieu activities as defined in the village's inclusionary housing ordinance. Johanna Neiden, our Community Development Director, will provide an overview of the concept this evening, and this item is for discussion.
It's not me, I'm sorry. I thought Joanne was
Okay, good evening, Johanna Neiden, Community Development Director. I will be as brief as possible. The Skokie Community Land Trust is a continuation of the implementation of the village's housing policy goals received by the village board in May of 2023. The memorandum in the meeting packet further explains what a community land trust is, but simply put, it creates an ownership structure to allow home ownership where it may not be financially possible for some households. This type of ownership supports the opportunity for households to purchase a home when they're income qualified, and the land that the property sits on is held in a trust, thereby making the home, the structure that somebody can live in, more affordable because they're just buying the structure, not the land. The land is the thing that makes things more expensive because, as in real estate, location, location, location. And then the home is sold at a reduced price to an income qualified person. At the point of sale, when you sit down at the closing table, the new owner would sign likely a document that is a covenant that would restrict the future sales to somebody who's income eligible, but also it would create a formula for future sale to preserve that affordability. Now, somebody might ask, how does that help somebody? How does that make the world a better place for somebody to live in a home at an affordable rate and then realize the value of that income from the sale, from owning a home? And the way that works is it creates a forced savings program through paying down a principal. Somebody can live in a home for as long as they would like, and during that time they pay down the principal of that home, that loan. So there's savings there in growing that equity. Generally in CLTs, the formula allows for some appreciation of the home value. So there's new gain there. And then the third way is that it helps people build home ownership, build the positive track record, build home ownership where they might not otherwise have had that opportunity. That home ownership is not a path for many people, but this creates that pathway for home ownership. And often people who are able to purchase in a community land trust are then able to move on to a home that is a market rate home, and they're able to continue that growth in that property, the realization of living in a property. I'll pause there, and I know this is a new concept for some, and I'm happy to answer any questions before I move on.
Yes, does the land ever transfer to the homeowner?
It does not. It remains in the trust in perpetuity.
So the homeowner never gets the benefits of the equity?
The homeowner gets the benefits of the equity in the structure. That would, the building, that would ultimately appreciate over time, but as well as the formula that would be created to allow some appreciation of that. So there's two big ways. There's usually a formula that allows an increase in the value of the structure, and then they're saving money by paying down the principal on the loan.
But they do, I assume then the land is off the tax rolls, but the dwelling is on it?
The dwelling is on it, and for example, in Chicago, they actually have a formula to reduce the property taxes for the structure, so you're not then eclipsed by the cost of the taxes in what you're paying in your monthly payment.
So the land trust is tax exempt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to mention the tax exempt piece of it, but how prevalent are community land trusts, like in the area, in the state? Just
Sure.
kind of-
So the ones I'm aware of there's several. There's different structures, but the concept is similar. Evanston, Lake Forest, Northbrook now has one. Highland Park is probably one of the oldest ones in the area. They have, I think at this point, 67 properties in their land trust. They've been going for, I think, almost 25 years. So it's a slow incremental process, but those are the ones in our area. We've been working with community partners for affordable housing. They work with many of those communities. We've been, I think, for almost as long as I've been here, we've been talking to them and bouncing ideas and questions and trying to understand how this might work in Skokie.
I just have a follow-up question. Just to give me a bite-size, response. Like, what are two positives and two challenges that people in your research and looking at community land trusts they have?
Sure. Well, I think the first one I think of is the homes that are often put into land trusts are homes that aren't for the everyday homeowner. They're homes that probably need a lot of rehab that the land trust brings on and rehabs and brings them into much more significantly habitable homes than were previously there. I think it's an opportunity for people who are ready for a home ownership opportunity. It helps get them on that track. It also, often with land trust, there's some counseling associated with getting into homeownership. I think that's very important for people. We all have stories of people who don't have counseling opportunities to get into homeownership, and they don't realize what they're getting themselves into. So I think those are, I kind of gave you 2.5 there, but those I think are some of the top ones. Is it really provides a lot of support to launch people into homeownership. In terms of what your challenges? Okay, challenges. I'd say there's a significant cost associated, and you're helping a single family. So in terms of where you want to spread dollars, that there's a decision there. We do know of some subsidies that may or may not be available from the federal government for things like this, and that remains to be seen if we would be able to access those if we did move forward with this. That's one, just the financial commitment of it. I think that's really one of the biggest pieces of it. I can't think of a second. I can give you two. I can give you one, but I can't think of a second one.
Okay.
Trustee Sutton.
I've seen the land trust work in Highland Park with my clients who have lost their homes due to a death in the family or something, so I'm really glad that you're working with them. I know how it can change people's lives, and I do believe that counseling piece is really important. And I've seen them move on to buy homes of their own after having that space to live with their families and get stronger financially and then go on their own. So I'm 100% in favor of these. Thank you.
Trustee Coon.
If you can explain to me, please, the decision-making process and how does a parcel of land get incorporated as part of the trust?
Sure. So there's a number of ways a home. I think it would be less so much a decision and more in how maybe a piece of land comes in to be part of the trust. There's some instances where people may donate their properties. There's a way in which that somebody can get a tax credit. They can get a tax credit for that through a process. So it may be advantageous for some households to donate a home. Sometimes it's a family member is deceased and it just sure turns out to be advantageous to donate a home, or somebody has an extra property. In my experience, we were able, in Evanston, we were able to obtain properties through tax sales and basically abandoned vacant properties. The city of Evanston was able to secure those properties, and that was one way in which we were able to move some properties into a land trust. And then there's just opportunities that may emerge, as I mentioned, properties that some buyers may not be interested, homes that sit for sale for a while that may require a more significant amount of work than somebody's prepared to provide. So those are all, there's any number of ways that properties can come into a land trust, either through direct purchase, donation, or other processes. But we're also aware of properties that may have been sitting vacant for a while. again, in my previous role, we were aware of properties that may have been good opportunities for those community land trust homes, and we were able to work with, in any of those scenarios I just described, we had awareness of what properties might be good.
Okay, and then my other question is, in considering establishing this land trust for the village, have we looked at other land trusts or potentially joining larger trusts?
So we've looked at Highland Park. And our staff has been in communication with Highland Park because they're considered the gold standard of the North Shore area. We've been in contact, I think, with Northbrook as well. We're aware of Lake Forest's work. Again, SEPA works with all of those, and we've been working with Community Partners for Affordable Housing, SEPA.
Okay, thank you.
So what is our proposal for governance? What would the board of directors for this land trust look like?
So we haven't fully explored what that would look like yet, but we're aware that we would need to look at some kind of governance structure for this.
And what is our proposal for a timeline for an ordinance or a proposal reaching the board?
We wanted to have a discussion tonight to see what issues are out there, and then to be able to strategize, to be able to develop an ordinance.
Okay. My one concern with what was in the memo is that it suggests that the eligibility would be for residents between 80 to 120% AMI, so that some residents would be eligible even if they make over the median income. I would like to just suggest that instead of 80% being the minimum, that it be the maximum, so that we can prioritize the residents who are most in need of the services that the land trust can provide.
I think that's helpful feedback. It might be helpful to talk a little bit about the land trust and how it fits into the kind of ecosystem of affordable housing, and how some affordable housing is at the 60% level and some is at the 120% level, and maybe what the logic is for that.
So one of the pieces of feedback we've heard from different partners is if we look, is the concern for making sure homes stay affordable without additional moving prices of things. You do still have to make home repairs. You still have to do, there's sometimes condos or townhomes don't always work the best because there's assessments, special assessments, and other things that become a little bit harder to control in the pricing, the monthly pricing, so monthly payment. That's one part of where the 80 to 120 was a recommendation from the ownership perspective. But we do realize that there's opportunities for condos and townhomes and other things, and that may be able to offer that locked-in monthly payment, so there's no surprise payments or other expenses that somebody might have to make. But in terms of the overall ecosystem, we've looked at, we have the inclusionary housing ordinance now that looks at 60 to 80% of AMI for rentals as they come online for on the property. We also are looking at, as we implement the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan, we're looking at several enhancements to our zoning code to start to allow different types of housing and some more flexibility with how people live in their properties based on our zoning code. So those are things that we look to in the coming year as we work through the housing subcommittee and the plan commission. But all of this is part of the bigger overall perspective of how we support different kinds of housing in the village.
And it sounds like it's to provide opportunities to keep people here.
It's both that and also to look at some of the properties that are probably not being utilized in their highest and best condition. They're properties that may not be contributing to an attractive neighborhood. It's their properties that's the property that has XYZ challenges, maybe property standards violations. We look to create a beautiful, walkable, vibrant neighborhood, and having people that can live in the home and take care of the property. Those are all things we like about our neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Item D was approved.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Hi, Gail Schechter, 9033 Beek Heating, and I'm very
pleased that the village is working on the community land trust. It was something that Skokie Neighbors for Housing Justice had proposed, and I just want to say professionally, back in 2000, I had actually worked closely with Highland Park as they put together what was then called the Highland Park Community Land Trust, now SEPA. I just want to add, in terms of other benefits to a community land trust, is it's really intended for people who want to, they live in Skokie because they want to be in Skokie. They're not in Skokie because they want to make a killing on the appreciation of their home. So it's important, although they will make some appreciation, but it keeps that home affordable forever. And that's one benefit. The other is that affordability, it actually, at the end of the day, will cost less to the village of Skokie because the cost of the value of the land is kept artificially low. So subsidy over time is lessened, and then it also can prevent tear downs. So my question, and what I hope that you'll work on as you're working on the community land trust, is one, broadening the mandate. Why just single-family home ownership? Why not condos? Why not also rental housing? Because Community Partners for Affordable Housing also controls the waiting list for inclusionary units, so you could expand the purview of the CLT. And then, and then the piece about housing counseling and having them also be involved in some of that. I guess Johanna referred to that. And then finally, paying attention to that governance piece, because community land trusts have a specific tripartite nonprofit governance that includes residents of land trust land, which is kind of exciting. Otherwise, it just becomes another housing, community development corporation. But a community land trust is a specific type of structure. And then I had another question, which I had raised in my public comment that I sent in, is shouldn't the housing subcommittee of the comprehensive, or whatever, the plan commission be working on it? I guess it's not part of their charter, but who is the body, the commission that's sort of deliberating about this so that, we can propose more input? Thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot to give my, may I go, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, I forgot to give my name last time for my other comment. Jerry Brozak, living in Optima. Life is funny. Nothing is black or white. I lived in Rogers Park since 1987, came to Skokie in 2018. My wife and I came to Skokie because it's well run. Mayor Van Duzen does a great job. Never heard anything, until recently, never heard anything bad about Skokie. Better run than Chicago, better run than Evanston. I'm happy. I have all the benefits from living in Skokie. Great place to live. Everyone's been nice to me. I knew when we moved to Skokie, I hope this is not pejorative, but it's one of the do-gooder communities. You have Oak Park, Evanston, Skokie, that's where all the activists live, all the do-gooders. I knew what I was getting into moving there, so I take the good, the bad with the ugly. I'm kind of on the conservative side, so, you kind of like live with the do-gooders. Tying into the earlier discussion, it seemed because it's going to tie in, we know that the horrible criminals have been released from other governments, and I hear we're going to protect them unless they commit a crime here and there's a warrant here, but they would be horrible people. We're going to protect them. Now, with the housing, I totally respect and have the highest admiration for a do-gooder like Trustee Johnson. I mean, I'm friendly with him. I admire him. He's one of the most courageous people I know, and I totally disagree with him in the affordable housing issue. I mean, I love the guy, but we just have an honest disagreement. Affordable housing is open to everyone in the world. There's no restriction. It has to be a Skokie resident. So it's charity for the whole world. The do-gooders want to help the whole world. That's good. Ms. Schechter is probably another living saint. I admire her. We have a different philosophy. I just don't think that we should be providing charity for the entire world, and that's my gripe with affordable housing. I think the money should go to help rat control, help pay for the lead pipe remediation, and not help everyone, but help our community. It's just a different philosophy we have, and I respect the other side. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had a thought about condos, because Ms. Nyden was talking about how one of the concerns with having multifamily housing, especially with condos or townhouses, is that you end up with a special assessment. So my personal experience with condo living is that for the first 5 years of my marriage, I lived in a condo, and it was, for the first couple of years, it was being run very poorly and at a deficit, and they burned through the reserves, and so we had a couple of special assessments. One, when the water heater had a giant hole in it, it was $1,400 a unit. And when we needed new windows, it was about $10,000 a unit. But then there was a shakeup on the board, and we took care of that. And then since then, and we've owned it since 2005, the leadership change happened around 2007, 2008, have not had a special assessment since then. So if you set the assessments at an appropriate rate, then you have reserves, so that when you have to replace all of the risers at $80,000, you have those reserves. You don't need a special assessment. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like, let that not be a reason not to have multifamily housing on the community land trust.
Emi Yamauchi on Oakton. First, I'm glad that this is coming up for consideration, because it has been quite a while. I'd feel more comfortable if we had a comprehensive housing study that had already been completed, since that is now going on over 2 years since that was committed to by this board. Some of the things I would ask the board and Ms. Nyden to consider as you review this memo is the reliance on fees in lieu for money. I would say, in the absence of a compelling reason, I would say that the purpose of affordable housing is to provide different levels of income in any given residential development, to provide for integration within a whole, and not to have these little islands of segregation where, oh, that's the affordable housing building, whatever. So I would ask you to relook at the fees in lieu part of that proposal. Again, I would agree with the previous speakers. I think that multi-family dwellings should be included. Otherwise, I think that there will be a number of single people, whether by choice or widows or divorced folks, who might not be eligible or might not want to live in a single-family home on their own. And lastly, I am really appalled at the 80 to 120% AMI. Because at that rate, just about anybody would be eligible for this housing. And it's supposed to be housing that is focused on the lower and lower middle income families. Because frankly, at 120% AMI, I would be eligible to apply. Okay, thank you.
Could I ask a quick question? First off, I agree with Gail and Emmy and Lori and the things that they said. But Johanna, you mentioned on the subject of property taxes.
Address the board.
Oh, sorry. Property taxes. The land trust, would the land trust be responsible for the property tax upon the value of the land? So nobody pays. That's the case? All right, that's surprising to me. Okay, that was it. And then the other question I had is if there's a practical example, because the subject is new to me, exactly how much can be saved if, for instance, if the average home value is $400,000? Under a land trust situation, what what would a person be able to buy the home if the land belongs to the trust? Is there a way to give an example of what it would look like? How much of a savings are we talking about?
And
That's it.
Johanna, you have any estimate?
So my understanding is that you would work with a market, real estate professionals, appraisers that would be able to separate the value of the land versus the value of the home, whether that's through a replacement estimate of the physical structure or other means that a professional estimation would yield. That's how you would do it. The land is exempt, the property, the structure is not exempt from taxes. That is still a taxable use, but the land that it sits on is the exempt portion of the land trust.
Thank you. Yes.
There appears to be public interest in being able to continue to engage and provide feedback around the land trust. What would be the best way to engage, for the public to engage and provide feedback?
Let us develop a system to be able to put together a document that incorporates the conversation tonight, the discussion, and then determine what the best way to solicit additional feedback and have conversation about that. So we'll develop that plan.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, I would even, request a series of hearings or opportunities to partner with, like SEPA to come in and listen to the experts in Highland Park, folks who've been doing the work to answer any of those specific questions, I think would be really helpful.
Next item.
Next item is C, the drive-through via special use process. There's been a thorough review of drive-throughs and many discussions, including most recently with the Economic Development Commission. The village's existing special use process within the zoning code will continue to apply to proposed drive-throughs. And as a result of the recent review, the special use policy guidelines are augmented with a framework that provides specificity to the drive-throughs. The policy guidelines remain constant, and the framework will evolve as drive-throughs evolve. Marketplace conditions change, and through periodic reviews. This is informational, and no action is required this evening. The last item is item D, which was...
I'll give a comment. So, just so we're all clear, so what this means for the drive-throughs process item is that we are not going to pursue the zoning chapter amendment, the ordinance to make code changes, binding code changes. And I do just want to remind the board that our board voted twice in late 2023 and late 2024 to move forward with the zoning chapter amendment that was proposed to us. On both occasions, behind the scenes, our explicit direction was disregarded. So I can accept this conclusion that we've come to, that we're not going to take any binding action, but the major process failures that have happened along the way and that are really obscured in tonight's memo, I find really disconcerting.
So item D is regarding the financial auditing services, and that was approved as part of tonight's consent agenda. And that completes my report this evening.
Next item on the agenda is report of our Corporation Council. This evening, Jim McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Good evening, everyone. Item A is an ordinance which was on the consent agenda tonight and was adopted at the beginning of this meeting. Item B is an ordinance which is on the agenda for first reading. Second reading will be on March 3rd, 2025. This ordinance will amend Chapter 2 of the Skokie Village Code by establishing term limits for the mayor, village clerk, and village trustees, both at-large and district trustees. Pursuant to Village Resolution Number 24-7-R-1573, beginning with the 2025 consolidated election, one may not hold the offices of village mayor, village clerk, and at-large trustee for more than 3 terms total. Beginning with the 2027 consolidated election, One may not hold the office of district trustee for more than 3 terms total. And Mayor, this will return for the board for action on March 3rd, 2025. Item C is an
We keep skipping without an opportunity for comment. So if there's no comment, I'm just going to throw in, this is a significant item. It's an opportunity to just, I just want to say how proud I am of Skokie residents for continuing to support electoral reform in Skokie. This is the 4th referendum that voters have approved in 4 years. And residents have really successfully turned one of the worst local electoral systems in the state into really an above average one, if not one of the best. And so it's something to celebrate. Thank you.
Proceed.
Item C is an ordinance which is on the agenda for second reading and adoption tonight. The first reading was on February 3rd, 2025. This ordinance will amend Chapter 10, Sections 10-10 and 10-63, the Skokie Village Code by allowing the sale and consumption of alcohol at 4051 Main Street, recently acquired by the village for various functions and events. This is a site-specific exemption which will allow the sale and consumption of alcohol on village-owned property. Any liquor sold or served at 4051 Main Street shall be provided only within the building interior and as part of a village-sponsored event or activity. The vendor must be an existing Skokie liquor licensee who would be required to obtain a temporary liquor license for each event pursuant to Section 10-40. Additionally, in response to the inquiries and requests by the Liquor Commissioner from existing and potential restaurants and other establishments for liquor licenses in the village, this ordinance will increase the number of Class E, Class M, and Class P licensed structures. Mayor, I request board action on this for tonight.
A motion is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Sutker. Are there any comments or questions? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes.
And that concludes my report for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you. The next item is Plan Commission Case 2024-40P, Special Use Permit 3462 Tui. Paul Luke with Johanna Nyden.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. In case 2024-40P, the Plan Commission at its January 9th meeting reviewed a request from 3452 LLC on behalf of Second City Pickleball LLC for a special use permit for a recreational facility at 3462 Tui in a B2 commercial zoning district, was recommended and approved on a vote of 8 ayes and 1 member absent.
A motion would be in order. Trustee Johnson, seconded by Trustee Kuhn. Are there any comments or questions? I'm trying to resist the inevitable comment.
Pickleball's a rage.
It is. Call the roll.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the
That
motion
concludes my
passes.
report. Thank you.
Thank you. Final item this evening is public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to address the village board?
So I fear the retirement of Mayor Van Dusen and Trustee Klein. Trustee Robinson could verify the fact that I say good things about the mayor behind his back. I've said
It's true, Mayor.
the good things I've said is that Mayor Van Dusen's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I've taken courses and talked with Nobel Prize winners at the University of Chicago. But I also said, so when Mayor Van Dusen makes a mistake, it's high drama, like King Lear, high drama. And I come here just out of intellectual curiosity, that's I have a truckload of that, and it's to watch when Mayor Van Duzen does everything perfect except makes a whopper of a mistake, and the big mistake was saying that the Corporation Council has to be his right-hand man, his buddy, and Mayor Van Dusen points to Jack Kennedy and his younger brother, but I think we see on the national level now, Republicans don't think the president and the attorney general should be buddies. Republicans don't like that. Democrats don't like that. It looks like the weaponization. I'm an attorney, and the thing I worry about is we should have in-house counsel, but he should be independent like the village manager. And I worry about when the mayor says, oh, I need someone to be my buddy. I worry about what's this buddy corporation counsel going to do that an ethical, independent person would not do. It's just a red flag. It's a red flag. You worry about dual loyalties. The corporation counsel here knows that his loyalty is not to the mayor, but to to Skokie. That's mandated by the rules of attorney they have to follow. And the original sin that comes out of that is the alleged back porch bribe to Trustee Johnson. If you want the corporation counsel to be your buddy, he's going to be your fixer, like Michael Cohen was the fixer for Trump. I mean, it's just, you do no good doing that. And the original sin that the mayor committed was to not go after, it looks like he condoned the alleged back porch bribe. And when he did that, he gave the keys of the kingdom to Trustee Johnson, and Trustee Johnson got everything he wanted. He got the whole, Trustee Johnson reformed Skokie government in essence to hobble the caucus party. I thought the caucus party did a great job, but you see how things play out, and they didn't play out well, and I hope a lesson is learned for the new administration that takes over. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I agree with the part about an independent corporation counsel. I did want to go back, if you don't mind, to the water outage, the water main break, and just say, I didn't want to say it because obviously the people who had the single-family homes that got flooded and frozen over had it far worse. But speaking for our condo board in a multifamily dwelling, it would have been very helpful for us to know immediately the severity. The initial reports did not indicate the severity. Boil water is fine, but the severity is a different matter. Because in a condo building, the water pressure goes off at different times at different levels, depending on what floor you're on. So without knowing the severity, it was impossible for the board to gauge what we needed to do to protect the infrastructure of the building, which is primarily the hot water, the boilers, and the booster pumps and the recirculation pump. Because without enough water pressure, they're going to keep cycling on to boost it. But with us not knowing that there was not going to be any water pressure ever and no water, even though there were various floors in our building who were saying, oh yeah, we do still have pressure, it was impossible for us to judge. So please, in the future, indicate the severity, not just boil water, but the severity of how long or how complete the lack of water pressure and the lack of water will be. Secondly, it would have been much more helpful for you to have issued regular updates, either every hour or every 2 hours, even if it was only to say work is still continuing. It would have saved a lot of time, people checking whether it was Skokie 911 or Skokie Alert or the Scoop. It would have saved a lot of time and confusion. And so I would ask that when you look at your emergency action plan in the future, that you consider the communication part really important. Going out with 6, 7, 8 messages in the space of, 61 hours, that's not that much. And the timeline from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and then the 10 o'clock update was just a repeat of the 8 o'clock posting. And also, I would look on your Skokie Scoop page. When the original posting was made, it said February 14th. All of the updates after that came at the bottom of the February the 14th. So the average person who's looking to see an update sees February 14th, and they're thinking, but it's the 15th, what happened? So when you issue the updates, please update the date. I know this sounds very nitpicky, but when folks are in a rush, they're just looking for a few catch lines. And if that catch line says February 14 and it's February 15, they're going to move on or wonder what happened. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Dalkin. I'm here to represent the interests of 9330 Laurel. Last May 31st, my parents and I, who are elderly and homebound, came downtown to meet with Mayor Van Duzen in person, and we handed him an agenda. And we spent maybe about 45 minutes talking with you, sir, about a variety of items in the city. I want to just read a couple of those because they involve the gross negligence of infrastructure, which is a relevant issue given the events of the past 72 hours. Church Street between Grosse Pointe Road and the Martin Grove border. I have a series of emails going with the village manager's office about repaving that date back to 2017. Once a year, where we get told every year that next spring it will get done. We're going to be lied to again this year. Why can't this village call up Ms. Preckwinkle instead of asking her to fix a road, instead of asking her to distribute bottles of water? During that meeting, we also discussed that about 40% of this village does not have AT&T fiber or other fiber internet. This affects home values, business attraction, and other just sane things that most other villages take for granted. In addition, we discussed that animal control has been decimated since the wonderful Maggie has retired into desk clerks at the police station who really don't have any ability to do this. At 9334 Laurel, there's a woman that owns 2 dogs that she lets out numerous times per day, and they bark about 10 times per day, and we've made numerous requests for the police department to rectify that. They are doing nothing. They're doing nothing because during that meeting on May 31st, 2024, we discussed that the police department is currently underfunded and understaffed by about 15 to 20 officers compared to what it was just 6 or 7 years ago. We have numerous issues, which I'll go over with the gentleman in the back of the room when the meeting's over, that need to be addressed, that have affected our family, that haven't been addressed. So what my request is at this time is I'd like to get information about where I could email this so that the trustees and the mayor and the village management team could review these issues and respond to us in writing, because nobody ever has bothered to, in the next 5 business days, and it become part of the agenda of the next meeting on March 3rd, because I love to hear all of your responses to these issues. I thank you for your time, and I wish you good evening. I'm happy to, yeah. I don't think I brought enough for everybody, but we can start that way. If you just give me the email address that I should email, I'd be happy to send a copy to everybody. What's the email address?
I'll send it out to them.
Okay.
They'll get it.
You'll get it? Okay. I'll send it again just for the public record. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gordon Kalabic, and I live on the 8600 block of Springfield. Tonight I'd like to speak about the proposed short-term rental ordinance and my experience of living next to an Airbnb. I believe that short-term rentals, like Airbnbs, are inherently at odds with suburban neighborhoods where families are raising young children, as they can be magnets for crime and unsavory behavior. I can personally attest to this, as I have the unfortunate privilege of seeing who comes to stay at my neighbor's Airbnb every weekend. Half the time, it's a large party that goes very late into the night. I'm often awakened at 3 in the morning to the sounds of shouting 20-year-olds in the backyard. My neighbor's Airbnb property advertises that it can accommodate 16-plus guests, and he charges over $500 per night, therefore incentivizing parties to be hosted there. It typically requires a large group of people to afford such a steep price. Therefore, parties are incentivized. I've looked at the proposed Skokie ordinance for short-term rentals, and I believe that it does not go far enough. The 2-night minimum proposed in the ordinance is something my neighbor already does, but unfortunately, it doesn't stop parties from happening, as the guests simply book the house for 2 nights, they have their party, and they leave the next day. They're happy to pay the higher price. They can split it up. They can split it up amongst 15 people. It's not a barrier. I've observed several teenage parties where seemingly there was unsupervised by any adults. Also, just 2 weeks ago, I had a stranger walk into my house at 1 a.m. because they were looking for the party house. I can honestly say my quality of life has been significantly impacted by the presence of this Airbnb. And I'd like to quickly mention a number of additional issues that I've experienced that are not being addressed by the ordinance proposal. I believe that hosts should not be allowed to advertise that they can accommodate 15-plus people. It really does act as an invitation to have a party. And with that often come 10-plus cars that take up valuable parking. Garbage overflow, I've observed overflowing garbage on my neighbor's property. I believe Airbnbs and short-term rentals should be required to have 2 garbage bins. Guests are never aware of alternate side parking during leaf collection and snow plowing. Just the other day, our snow did not get plowed because the Airbnb guests failed to move their cars. Now we're stuck with a big pile of frozen snow in front of our home. These are regular occurrences. These are not one-offs. Airbnb hosts should also be held to a higher standard when it comes to shoveling their sidewalk. As we speak, my neighbor's property is the only one on the block that has not been shoveled. The ordinance should implement a system of tracking and enforcing infractions with regard to noise violations. I believe it doesn't currently do that. By living next to an Airbnb, I'm subjected to a different neighbor every several days. That's between 50 and 100 new next-door neighbors in a given year. This simply has a destabilizing effect on my neighborhood. Some towns restrict the number of days that a host can rent their house each year, and I believe Skokie should add this to the provision, to the ordinance as well. In conclusion, I'm raising a young child who will grow up not knowing the stability or sense of community that long-term neighbors provide. I pay very high property taxes to live in Skokie. I expect the village to do more to protect residents like myself from this loophole in zoning regulation that frankly shouldn't be allowed at all. But if we must allow it, I beg you to do something to protect Skokie residents from these corporations and entrepreneurs who exploit our neighborhoods for their personal financial gain without giving anything back. Thank you.
Would you send that to me?
Absolutely.
I'll give you my email address.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further comments, I'll speak. So for the 30th meeting in a row, I'm speaking in opposition to the board's political hiring and misconduct involving attorneys in Skokie's legal department. Every village board member is very well aware of how politicized our legal department is. As was seen in some of the public comments tonight, residents are very aware of how politicized our legal department is. Our village employees and staff members are very aware of this problem. So given the widespread awareness of this problem, I really strongly believe there's no good reason to not act. So again, I am advocating that the board work to reform this department and the board's appointment process for attorneys, and really ensure that this department is actually as nonpartisan and professional as our great village manager's office and the really great departments that are working under our village manager. This is a major systemic problem, and the board's avoidance of this problem is in itself incredibly problematic.
Trustee Robinson.
Just real quick, please don't speak on my behalf. I know you said I just wanted to say that. Just wanted to end with some numbers. 100 plus 1. 1 incident. Going to 3 days of service and dedication and work. Over 100 volunteers. There will be 1 day of gratitude for those who helped with all the volunteer efforts. So more to come on that to those who volunteered. Just wanted to end on a positive note. Thank you.
I'll use the remainder of my time. I do apologize for speaking on your behalf. I should not speak on your behalf. But I will remind the board that I've made all of you very aware of how attorneys were sent to bribe and threaten me when I was a candidate for office. All of you personally witnessed this board's attempt to block voter initiatives from the ballot in 2022. You are all, in my opinion, very aware of the problems in our legal department. So I will not speak on your behalf, but from my perspective, I sure hope that every member of this board is very aware of this problem.
Trustee Zucker.
I move we adjourn.